Well, hey guys, how are we doing?
Hey, great. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to be here today. I'm Scott Sliver, and I'll be the host today. I'm the chair of Communications, Press, and Publicity for the Dayton unit NAACP, and I'm here today with my guest, Reverend Herman Branham, who's our first vice president and chair of our Religious Affairs Committee. Welcome to you. Glad to have you here today. And seated next to him is Reverend Dr. David Fox, who chairs our Criminal Justice Committee. Welcome to you as well. Yeah, I guess I should tell people a little bit about myself before you guys jump in there. I'm also on the City of Dayton Landmarks Commission, and we oversee the historic districts. And I was also appointed to the Community Police Council about 6 months ago. And I know you've been a part of the Human Relations Council for a lot of years, so the CPC is part of that. My day job is I'm associate pastor at the Vineyard Church in Dayton, and I'm also executive director of the Hope Foundation of Greater Dayton. And we've been feeding about 1,000 families every month for the last, I don't know, going on a decade now. So I'm excited to be here with you guys. How did I end up as chair of Communications, Press, and Publicity? Well, before I was a nonprofit guy and became a pastor, my background is advertising and marketing, and I'm a social media guy at heart. So that's enough about me. We're not here to talk about me today, but why don't you each take just a moment and let our viewing audience know a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I am Reverend Herman Branham, and I pastor Jerusalem Missionary Baptist Church. And I've been pastoring there about 15 years now. I also was the organizer of that church 15 years ago. And I've lived in Dayton all my life in this community. Grew up and born in Dayton, born in Miami Valley Hospital. And of course, I have found Dayton to be a place where I guess this is where I want to leave. I mean, I don't plan on going nowhere else, but I certainly have had an opportunity to do some things since I have, lived in Dayton since I've graduated and have become an adult.
You graduated from where?
I graduated from Jefferson High School.
Jefferson,
and
okay.
Went to Bowling Green State University, as well as Central State University.
All right.
And I've also have attended, the Theological Seminary, United, and also the Southern Baptist Seminary here in, they're housed out of Kentucky. So, ex-school teacher, taught for 6 years.
Okay.
Jefferson High School. And
current coach
at Sliver High School.
And what recently? What was your? You had a cross country team,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, cross country team, and we were the city champs for 2017.
Yeah.
The boys' first time in history for Slivers.
That's amazing. I was a cross country runner back in the day, and we went to state 3 times, and that was such an exciting time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exciting. Yeah. Reverend Fox, how about you?
Well, I'm a Daytonian, native, all my life. Mm-hmm. I'm at Calvary Missionary Baptist Church as the Director of Christian Education. Mm-hmm. I've been there for close to 35 years, I believe, somewhere around there. And
so we got 3 pastors sitting here.
Yeah.
So watch out.
I'm a retired police chief, was in law enforcement for 40 years, and I retired from the Wilberforce University, where I also was an adjunct professor, and also I was in education 42 years in a variety of different schools and systems. Spent a lot of time, of course, in civil rights. Mm-hmm. Started when I was age 17, and was a part of a SCLC, and then I'm now with the NAACP. And I work on criminal justice cases for the NAACP. Having a background in law enforcement helps me to be able to understand some of the injustices that people may face and some of the situations in which they get themselves into, that we can have a conversation about how better they can handle this themselves, and plus advocate for individuals who have been unjustly treated.
You're also on the oversight committee that was recently appointed, right, for Montgomery County Jail?
Yeah, on the oversight committee with the, actually it's not an oversight committee, called the Justice Committee, that looks into the issues that is facing the jail. I'm also on the Dayton Citizens Appeals Board. But I belong to, in the past, or close to about 35 different boards, co-organize a whole bunch of different organizations that related to race relations, and also some of our youth programs that we have done in the community, one of which was the situation at the Salem Mall where the ministers, we went there and walked through the malls to talk to the young people when they were having violent activities there. But a whole lot of initiatives that I've been a part of. I was, of course, the chairperson for the Peace Bridge for many, many years, the coordinator of the Martin Luther King celebration for many years. And among those are just a few of the activities that I've been involved in my career of community relations and community responses and activism in the community.
Well, it's an honor for me to just be seated across from you two. I've had different conversations with both of you, and what we're going to focus on today is about business. And you might say, well, criminal justice isn't business, or how does that all fit? But really, we're going to talk about your experience in your areas. 46 years, you said, as an Allstate agent.
Yes.
And I'm sure 46 years ago, when you started out, is a little bit different than it is today.
Yes,
right?
very, very.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, about your experience?
Well, 46 years ago, when I started, actually the exact date was January 31, 1972, and at the time I was teaching school out of Jefferson. But when I started then, it was a tough bout for me. I didn't realize exactly what I was getting into until I actually started working for Allstate Insurance. And once I got into the marketplace and started seeing some things, just speaking of things being unjust things happening. Well, at that time, first of all, I was the first Afro-American that was hired in the city of Dayton for Allstate Insurance Company. And of course,
how many other agents were there at that time?
Well, there was probably about 25 agents here in Dayton at that time, yeah. And of course, even when I went to the Allstate school in Chicago, there was only 6 minorities in that class out of about 35. And so, but what I found out once I really got into the business, I found a lot of things that was just unfair when it came to the African American community, because many places I would go that was, let's say on Dayton West Side and surrounding areas, they had what they call redlining. And redlining was where it was an area that Allstate refused to write insurance on, okay? And that was the area where most of the African Americans resided. And
that was pretty widespread. It wasn't only Allstate. That was a lot of different types of companies, right?
There was other companies too.
Mortgage companies even, right?
Yeah, mortgage companies, other insurance companies, which I won't mention them, but I just want to mention what I worked for. And even though once I found that out, I became very disheartened, because I felt like they hired me to work for them, but yet still I was not able to really write in my own neighborhood, and so I really did not see a purpose for staying there. Well, and I went to my CEO at that time, our manager, and I told him, I said, I'm gone. And I told him what was going on. He said, well, Herman, just wait. He said, because he said, there's something coming down the pike, okay? So August of 1972 was when they lifted the redlining, throughout the state of Ohio. And so that opened the marketplace where I could go anywhere in Dayton, Ohio to write insurance. And what made it difficult for me was because my own people get mad at me because of the fact that I couldn't write, and it made it very tough for me to
friends, neighbors,
yeah, friends were all right
that wanted you to write for them, and you weren't able to because of the rules in place.
Exactly, yeah. And what a lot of people, they didn't realize, even like I said, I don't want to name other companies, but they were doing the same thing. They're saying you have one kind of insurance, you find out you got something else, and like I said, by me getting involved, I was able to really see what was really going on. Even when I would go into, once they allowed me to go into, we was able to go into other areas on the west side, and they're showing me these policies that's paying all these high premiums for minimum coverage, and I was able to, change a lot of those policies for them. And not only that, because speaking of discrimination, it was alive and well. I would go into certain areas, just like Vandalia, Miamisburg, was Carrollton, Oakwood, and those areas. It was like I was a criminal. You know, they didn't want to deal with me. I remember going into one household, and I'm sitting up there, and they. And
You mean when you were doing like cold calls?
Yeah.
When you were going around just going down, knocking on doors?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember one couple said, "Well, when did they start hiring you people?" I said, "What people?" You know? I said, "What are you talking about?" I mean, I knew, but you know,
Yeah.
and it seemed like they just had a problem with that. But you know, I gave us something I enjoyed doing, and that was teaching and coaching. And what that did, that made me more determined. I said, "Well, let them, we people." I said, "I'm gonna show what we people can do." So
Yeah,
I just gave me more of an incentive to want to go out here and just prove myself. And it seemed like every time I would go out, I had to prove myself because they would like quiz me over and over about the policy. But I always stayed a step ahead of them because it's like going home doing homework the night before. So when I went into one of those homes, I mean I know I'm going to get quizzed. So I wanted to make sure that I knew what I was talking about. And even though I would make the sale, but they would say, "Well, we'll think about it." But when I would go back to downtown where we was housed in Sears, a couple of days later, I see that same person name come across the counter, but I wasn't the one that sold it. That's just the way it was. See.
So Reverend Fox, for you, how does your experience compare to Reverend Harmon's, or Branham's, his experience?
Well, it's kind of a little bit more complicated. The question is whether or not did I experience racism in law enforcement? Of course, but a little bit different, more subtle, but it did exist. Mm-hmm. And of course it also existed when you went to people's homes. I never will forget one time I took a call on Forest Avenue at the corner of Grand. And
Now, how far back are you going here?
1976.
76. Okay, so it's same era.
And this little kid was tugging on his mother's dress, and he said, "Mama, there's an N-word."
Just like that.
Yeah. And I never forgot that. But at the end of the day, though, you did your job, and we faced a lot of problems because we had our own association called the Black Police Association, and it was separate from the FOP. But at the same time, the experiences that we had were we met with the best way we could handle it. But I saw some stuff I didn't like, though. One of the things I didn't like was when women came on the police force, how they were treated. They weren't treated with dignity and respect like they should have had. That was when they allowed them to, of course, wear the pants and to wear the shirts and the same uniform that the guys wore. But at the end of the day, I tell you one thing, though. When it came time for people to respond and make assist and those kind of things, people did their jobs. We had our problems otherwise, but people did their jobs and made sure that they backed you up and you backed them up.
Well, even today, the percentage of minorities on the police force in Dayton is like 15% or something like that. How did it compare back in the 70s? Was it similar? Has it always been low like that?
Yeah. That. Let's be real about this. If you get in a car and travel from far west of Ohio and drive all the way to the east part of Ohio, all the way across the state, the only where you're going to find some black police officers at is in Dayton and Wilberforce and Central State. You're not going to find them nowhere else. They're not there. And in most instances, you might find one or two, but it's not that many. It is a problem. It's always been a problem. Ever since the 70s, it's been a problem. Now, some of our larger cities, we have more police officers, but that was because of consent decrees and those kind of things. But without a consent decree, the difficulty of getting black policemen on the police force is difficult for a lot of reasons. One reason they don't want to be policemen.
Yeah.
Another reason, of course, is because of people's backgrounds. But at the end of the day, recruiting black policemen is very difficult. And I don't think it's going to change that much, especially now for the dislike people have towards police.
Yeah, it hasn't improved much.
It hasn't improved at all.
And with social media, it's probably worsened to some degree. So then, in your experience, when did it begin to change, or has it, over the course of 46 years, how much did it really change?
Well, it's a change quite a bit, but I can see some things happening. I can see some of the same scenarios coming back, because with me being there in the business, and as we compare rates, right now it's zip codes, okay? And even though the city of Dayton is the city of Dayton, but when I look at certain rates on certain zip codes, and it's still city of Dayton, and in other areas of the city of Dayton, I begin to see a difference, and I've tried to address that with them, but they're trying so well, it's no issue. And this here goes for, most of your largest insurance companies. And I can understand to a degree, but I feel like, that one of the things that does help, because insurance now is not just, rates are not just based on your driving record. I'm just speaking of car insurance, but it's based on your credit. So what they do now, they do run a credit, but the credit does not tell us anything about what you have out there and what you don't have out there. But there's a number between 1 and 4, between 1 and 15, 1 being the best, 15 being the worst. So your rates impacted by that, because they feel as though people that don't have, the best of credit, many times there's a lot of, what do you call it, when, fraud committed. They'll do things just to collect from the insurance, right? Yes, and so that's the reason that they do it that way now. And I feel as though that's fair to a degree, but overall, when I still see some things happening, I still see some unfairness. But as far as when it comes to that, I see some of that coming back for us. But as far as really working in the marketplace in the insurance business, there's been quite a bit of changes there. I mean, I don't have the issues. We don't have the issues that we used to have, because even I would go to certain areas, just like Reverend Fox was saying, you hear the N word. I'm driving through a neighborhood or wherever, they say, there's an N, and I mean, it was saying, they look at me and give me all kind of signs and all, but I don't see as much of that no more. It seemed like that's kind of settled down now, but as far as with the company that I've been employed with for 46 years, I can't really speak real bad about them, because it's really a good company to work for. I've got all my kids.
That wouldn't be a good idea anyway, would it?
Right. But I've gotten all my kids to college and everything else, and they've been very fair to me. They've not really discriminated against me personally.
Sure.
Even from day one when I started. If anything, I maybe had a few of my peers that did some things, but we got around that. So, but other than that, it's just the way it is, and what do you do with a multi-billion-dollar company? You got those that have issues, and it's going to be there, but you learn to work with. I can work with anybody. It doesn't. Color don't mean nothing to me.
Yeah.
That's just me. And I'll talk to you and anybody else. It doesn't make any difference. And I'm gonna try and do the best job for you as I do. If I'll be doing for one of my own, people. It's because it's not even about that. It's about doing what is right and what is fair. And I'm one that want to make sure that I'm fair with everybody.
Well, that's why you're successful in your business, and that's how you were in a business. To do anything for 46 years is pretty remarkable. Yeah, man, and one thing that they did give us opportunity, because once Allstate spin off from Sears, because we was owned by Sears at one time, but then we spin off from Sears. That's one of the reasons. But anyway, we spin off from Sears, but then they gave us an opportunity to become independent. And then independent meaning that I was able to own my own agency, and I owned my own agency for about 18 years.
and I sold it about 10 years ago. So now I'm just working for someone in the marketplace, you know, because it's great to own your own agency, but then if you get so many years and you get some age on you, say, well, you know, it's time to back off because there's a lot of work involved. But then I feel like the Lord has blessed me. So, I mean, what I have is what I have. What I don't have before I leave, I just won't get it.
All right, Reverend Fox, we'll switch over to you now. Because I was at the University of Dayton at the Osher Lifelong Learning when you gave a presentation on the history of Dayton police and challenges in law enforcement. And I thought you just did a great job of talking about some of the difficulties between the community and police, and I wondered if you might speak into that. It was so enlightening for me, and I'm sure it was for the group of people you were speaking to.
Well, basically, there's a history in relationship to mistrust of black people with police, and rightly so, because the police actually are those who represent and stand for the law. And many times the law has been unjust in its practices in the country. For example, the black code laws were unjust laws that were regulated on black people, and the people who had to enforce those laws were police. And because they enforced those laws, of course, there was this mistrust and distrust in police as it relates to black people. From a historical standpoint, when we see blacks who, for example, the Emmett Till situation, where these individuals was able to get away with murder until they were captured and still not even done justly because of the justice system didn't do what it should have done. So the police represent the government, and the government is, to most people, something that they don't like. And so the police become the target. And because they are the target, black people just have some real issues with them. And as we were growing up as kids, I remember when we would see police, we would run. But we didn't have a reason. We just run.
I think we all did that.
Yeah, the police. Yeah.
And so it's from, and this is what I tell parents. You know, a lot of times what happens when a policeman shows up, the first thing they'll tell their little kids, I'm going to have him get you. Well, that's not the right thing to say to a child. Because once kids are growing up and they hear that the police are not your friend, that the police are going to get you, that the police are going to arrest you, I'm going to have him arrest you and all this stuff, it gets ingrained in the child's mind. And as a kid gets older, that's what they're inclined to do, is run when they see the police. And they don't have this trust. But the police really, which is interesting, they represent those who are to enforce the laws, of course, but they also are there to protect and to serve. And this is what people tend to forget. Even sometimes the police tend to forget it. Their job is to protect and to serve. And there's a way of looking at this. The police are the community, and the community are the police. I mean, the police cannot separate themselves from the community, nor can the public separate themselves from the police. And as it relates to that, if we are to understand the function of the police, then it's going to be much better for those who come in contact with them. And this is one of the problems that we're having now with our young people having contact with the police, with this mistrust that they have in the police. This is the reason why a lot of these situations end up in a bad light, because of the fact that there's not a good communication between the police with the citizen, and maybe there's not a good communication with the citizen back to the police. And so there's no really fine balance there. And so what we have in most instances, when there's not a good balance, there's a situation that may result in a physical arrest that shouldn't even never taken place in the first place.
So being on the Criminal Justice Committee, and you investigate if somebody feels like they've been treated unfairly, right? So in your experience, then what do you find, because you're sort of brought in after the fact, right?
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Right.
Definitely,
So what do
definitely.
you find? Do you have examples where
Oh,
this has been said and this
yeah,
was what
yeah.
was claimed? And
It's a lack of understanding and knowledge of the laws, number one, by citizens, as to what police can do and what they can't do. Okay.
so what's a garden variety situation that
Well,
you investigate?
Well, good example. It's not about what I investigated, but it's about how people's perceptions are. For example, you may get someone to say, well, the police pulled me over and the police had me to get out of my car, okay? And the reason why they had me get out of the car is because I'm black. Well, no. The police have a right to order you out of the car. That's a Supreme Court decision. They have a right to order you out. They have a right to do these things. Well, he searched me or he patted me down. Well, yes, they have a right to do that because there's laws that say that they can based on Supreme Court decisions. So they don't understand these Supreme Court decisions. They don't understand certain laws and all that kind of stuff. And so when it's done to them, they get upset about
So
it.
a lot of the time after the fact, you're brought in, and these are the type of questions you hear.
They don't have the
that's
questions.
That's
No.
a common theme, and you say, look, the police can pull you over, they can pat you down.
They can do certain things. Well, here's the whole point. If we move from mere suspicion to probable cause, or we move from observable facts. For example, the police pull you over and they smell marijuana, okay? Well, they have a right to make this search. The problem is, for most young people believe, well, marijuana is legal.
Yeah.
Well,
It's not legal.
Exactly. Okay. And
I've had that conversation with people before. Let's call the police and see what they say.
and the other problem is, if you have less than 100 grams of marijuana, then it's my personal use, and so therefore I have a right to have it on me. Well, no, you don't. I mean, So now you can't be arrested per se for it. You can get a ticket for it, but still, yet it's still against the law. Mm-hmm. And what happens is, once the police have that information based on the observable facts, based on the ability to be able to know that it exists based on smell, they can then bring in drug dogs if they choose to do so, which leads to other stuff. It may lead to some drugs, major drugs in your car. Now you're hollering about, well, they did this because of my race. No, they did it because of the fact that they smelled the marijuana. They have a right to bring the drug dogs in. The drug dogs had a hit. They found the marijuana in your car or the drugs in your car, and now you got a real problem. And it's not because you're black. It's all because of the fact that you had done something that you shouldn't have done. Now, but a lot of the cases that come in there, though, have these kind of questions of gray areas. And then sometimes there are issues of real police abuse, where police have abused our citizens. And then when that happens, I then send them down to our professional standards bureau with the Dayton Police Department, so that an internal investigation could take place by the police. And they would conduct an internal investigation. And if their findings are justify any kind of abuse, then they take disciplinary action towards that individual. Now, if they find no probable cause that something occurred, or insufficient evidence that something occurred, that it was a violation of policy or procedure, or even a violation of law, they will say so, but the citizen then still has a right to make an appeal to that decision. And in many cases that I deal with, which will require also attorneys. So that's when they have to be told that they need an attorney to deal with this situation, and that I can't help them no more in that relationship to trying to get them off, because that's not my job. My job is not to be an attorney. My job is to be an advocate as to the situation that the person may find themselves being discriminated in.
Very good. Wow. Reverend Branham, NAACP is a civil rights organization, and at what point in your life did you get involved, or has it always just been a part of your life?
No, probably about 10, 12 years ago. And I was seeing some things, and I knew about the Dayton chapter, and Derek, which is our president, he invited me to come to a couple meetings, which I did. And after I sat in a couple of meetings and I was hearing certain things like the Reverend Fox, things that was going on within our neighborhood and with the African American community, I felt like, well, maybe it's time. Maybe I can get involved. See, at one time I was not able to get involved in too much at all because, with my business and both my parents are sick. I'm trying to take care of them and everything, so I didn't have that freedom. So then I had that open window, even get back in my coaching, and to get involved with work with the NAACP. But after I sat in a few meetings and listened to some things, I said, you know what, maybe I will join.
Okay,
maybe.
at the top of what you just started saying, you said I was seeing some things.
Mm-hmm.
What was changing? What was stirring in you?
Well,
what happened? Was there an instance or?
Well, it was not so much anything that was happening locally, but I'm hearing national things that was going on. And I knew that most time we are given that we know what's going on. They tell us and so on, but there was something going on somewhere down south, and I just said, wow, this is not right. If they're doing it there, then what's going to happen here? Because it just things just kind of travel, and I felt like we should have been past that point, which I guess we'll never get past it. With the Civil Rights Act, because it's as though that they want to take us backwards. Go backwards. No. God is a progressing God. Move forward. So why go back? So I felt like maybe with my involvement within the local chapter, and that would I would be doing my community service to try to to be on the Dayton team to to help in certain areas or to have input or whatever, and going to the national conventions helps me because there's so much that we don't know about all the time, but then we can come back, we discuss it, and then it just makes me really want to become more and more involved in, because it's only right, and what concerns me is what they don't realize, well, what some people don't realize. I mean, we all put on this earth together. Now, the people that say they're Christians, they say they're going to heaven, they doing this and that. Well, I mean, there's no color barrier there. Mm-hmm. And if they say they're Christian and they're going to heaven, they aren't going to have no west side, east side. I mean, we're all going to be together. Yeah. And so it just saddens my heart, because of people, that people, want to just look at us as being whatever, and just disrespecting, not just, us, but others as well. And what really concerns me is years ago, I'll shut up in a minute, I took a Black History course at Central State, and that stuck with me. Because the more history that I read and how my forefathers, they were slaves and things, and how they would take them from they split their families up and do all these things, that's very very hurting to, and that's the reason personally, I mean, it's time that we speak up, stop sitting back, because I mean the law has been put in place. But but it's like if nobody take a stand, mm-hmm. They're going to take us back to slavery. Yeah. And that's just and that's not, and God is not pleased with that. Yeah, for sure. And if they even look at what is it, the Chronicles of 7:14 of my people. I mean, nothing's going to change unless we all get together and we turn back to Him. And only He can do the healing of the land. I don't care who's up in the White House. Yeah. Man can't do it, but God can do it. Yeah. But we just have to have the faith, and we have to continue to do what we know is right, and continue to see people as people, and it's not about color no more. It should not be that.
That's good. Mm-hmm. But Reverend Fox, you got involved. You were a young man, right? You were a teenager when?
Yeah, I was 17.
So tell us a little bit about what was happening.
I started first with the White Hats. We had a group called the White Hats in Dayton. We started by C.J. McLean. It was a youth patrol group that patrolled the streets after the riots that we had in 1966. And then I joined the Dayton Urban League, and we were very much involved in working with W.S. McIntosh and
And
working.
Gooding, Jesse Gooding, was he around then?
No, yeah, he was, but I didn't know him as well as I knew W.S. McIntosh and Reverend Dunson and Reverend David Gilbert. Those gentlemen were giants at the time, and I met Jesse a little bit later, but when I was young then. Of course, dealing with Art Thomas, CJ introduced us to Art Thomas, who became our mentor. And in 1968, when I was at Central State, and after Dr. King was murdered and assassinated, we put together a march from Central State University into Xenia, which we believe was the first march in America commemorating Dr. King. So we walked into the Xenia, had a rally there, and
How was that received at the time?
oh, it was received well.
Yeah.
That was that 4 miles that we walked into Xenia and came back. Later that year, I went to Ohio State University and dealing with protest when we was dealing with the issues dealing with Cambodia, with the policy that Nixon had. So we had demonstrations on the campus of Ohio State. Went to Michigan State. We was working on helping them and organizing demonstrations, and we were on our way to Kent State University on May the 4th. And we was on our way there, and 40 miles outside of Kent State, that's when we found out that they had the guardsmen had killed these students, so we couldn't get inside Kent State, so we went on down to Ohio University. So those were my early years of dealing with civil rights and issues of discrimination and problems. And then later on, of course, I continued my work and with SCLC, where I became on the board of SCLC here in Dayton, and also was the Fair Practice Committee investigator for them, and traveled across the country dealing with a lot of civil rights injustices and those kinds of things. And then I got involved in putting together a lot of groups that dealt with issues dealing with civil rights issues and dealing with unfair practices within the community. And eventually I got here with NAACP and been with them for several years on the executive committee with NAACP and also the chair of the criminal justice. So my career goes back in in these issues dealing with civil rights. Some 52 years of volunteerism, I guess that's what you could call it, working hard in it. And we've done a whole lot of stuff in this community.
Where do you think we're at today?
Where we at today?
2018, where are we at? Why is the NAACP still relevant?
Well, the NAACP is relevant because people don't have nowhere to go to some extent. They come down there every day because this has happened to them, or that has happened to them. A lot of times, and I'm just a part of what we do down there. Mm-hmm. We have a labor division that deals with all of our discriminatory practices at employment issues, and also discriminatory practices dealing with housing, dealing with accommodations, those kind of things. All those things are handled down there. So that's just a small segment of what I do. So people know they've been discriminated against, but they don't know what to do about it. So they come to NAACP because it is the longest reigning organization in the country that deals with the civil rights issues of people of color. And by the way, we deal with people of color. That's right. Which means that I have dealt cases with people who call themselves Caucasians. I have dealt with their cases because they are people of color. and as a matter of fact, when I was a regional EEO administrator at one time, and I was doing cases with people who were Caucasians, and one of the questions that was said to me was, well, why are you doing this case? These people look like me. They're the same color as me. They're white like me. Why are you saying that they're being discriminated against? I said, because they're people of color. Yeah. and I won my cases based on color, not based on race. Right. Yeah. And so we are out to help any and all people who have injustices done against them. Now, most white people don't know that. But it was NAACP, founded in 1909, was founded by some of the
It was a
people
multiracial.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it is not just for black people.
Because people are surprised when they find out that I'm a member of the
Exactly.
NAACP.
Exactly.
You know, I shared that at our church last week when I was preaching. It was like the oxygen got sucked out of the room.
Yeah.
People, some chuckled and some were like, "What?"
Yes,
You know,
sir.
they don't even realize
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
somebody who's white would be a part of the NAACP.
So we're relevant.
Yeah.
And we're relevant because there is a track record since all the way back to 1909. That's the reason why we're relevant.
So, Reverend Branham, where do you think we're at right
Yeah,
now culturally, and what keeps you involved, and what are you passionate about?
Well, I mean, I'm glad that Reverend Fox said what he said, because you're saying the same thing, because people look at it as a black organization.
Do you think that
But-
changed after Martin Luther King was assassinated, that it kind of shifted a little bit more, that it became more focused, that where white people kind of backed out, maybe? Do you think that's when? I don't know that. That's just my guess as someone who looks in and wonders.
Well, you would have a better point of view than we.
Well, that would be my, I guess that'd be,
Yeah.
that'd be my guess. Like that would be a natural time where it would change, because then there was more distrust and,
Right.
and understandably so.
Yeah, and I think what what I'm seeing too is many, and it's just not Afro American, but many persons are being discriminated on their jobs for whatever reason, and in order, they want to keep the job, but to go to that foreman or that person in charge and sit down and have a conversation with them about how they feel and all, they're afraid of losing their job. So like Reverend Fox said, well, they have no place else to go, but they come to us because they trust us, and knowing that we're going to investigate it. We may not always use their name, but we're going to check it out and see what's going on. And because it's just, I was talking to one of my members from my church just the other day, and something happened, but I was about ready to tell her to go down to the office and file a complaint. But I dug a little deeper. I said, it's not making sense. I'm missing something here. But then after they told me, I said, okay. I said, that's fine. It's because I need to go on your job? Do I need to go have you file a complaint? But after I dug a little deeper, I realized that no, this is not something that we're involved in, something that they did. But sometimes the truth don't come out, as Reverend Fox was saying earlier. They come up with maybe something that's not right, because there's two sides to every story.
Yeah. And
I'm sitting up there and I'm getting upset. What are you talking about? I mean, how can you not be here and because you was absent you're gonna lose your job? I said something's wrong here. But then I found out really after I kept asking them. But again, because they know we're there, and they know that we're going to look into if it's legit. If it's just some crazy stuff, no, we're not going to waste our time on that. But because of the fact that they trust us, they feel as though that we are, that here in Dayton, we're doing the job.
Yeah.
I mean, people see that, even though they may not do a lot of, we're not always out there on Front Street, marching this and that, but a lot of things are getting done. That's when we tell them to go to the website.
Well, it's really the hard work behind the scenes.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
You see the big meetings regarding the closing of Good Sam or Aldi's or the potential closings and the right sizing of Dayton Public Schools, all that. That's what gets all the press,
Sure.
but it's the person who calls in on a Monday morning and says, hey, I'm being discriminated against. That's really where the hard work and the change is implemented, right?
Yeah.
That's the heavy lifting, and I think that I want to piggyback on what Reverend Brandon has just said, because, see, most people equate how to deal with civil rights with protests, discriminate, and discriminate. Boy, my mind went crazy there. But they think you need to go out there and demonstrate and protest and yell and holler and make noise. But that's not how we do business with NAACP. Right. We have always done business from a historical nature with getting in the boardroom and having conversations and making negotiations and making issues and putting them on the table and putting the stuff out there and mediating these kind of situations. And at the end of the day, public policy changes take place. And that's how you equate what the power of an organization is whether or not it can affect public policy. Affecting public policy in terms of the schools desegregation in 1954 with the Supreme Court making that decision of the integration of schools and things. That's affecting public policy. Civil Rights Act of 1964 is affecting public policy. Civil Rights Act of 1957 was affecting public policy. These kind of issues that take place and often is not taking place because somebody is making a lot of noise and making. Dr. King, even though he did marches, also sat down with people and had conversations.
He met with the president.
Exactly. So
he had an audience and he had a voice.
That's exactly right. So that's kind of what we do effectively. We can get in the doors where other people can't get at. We can sit down and talk to the people that other people can't talk to, and oftentimes things work out for the best for everybody.
That's very good. So, there's a lot of young people, a lot of restlessness right now with millennials and young professionals. And what would you say to somebody who wants to get involved? How would they get involved with what we're doing? What would you recommend?
Well, I talked to a young man 2 days ago, a couple of days ago, and he called to get some information about how we do the criminal justice. And I told him, I said, why don't you come? We have a meeting once a month, which actually is tonight. It's every fourth Monday of the month at 6 o'clock at the Dayton Boys Preparatory School, when people can come out and see what the NAACP is doing. And each month we have a special presentation that is given to the public, and the public is invited to be a part of it, where they can address and ask questions about whatever particular activity or issue that we're talking about. And as a result from that, hopefully young people, after seeing what we're doing and how we're doing it, can say, okay, I like to be involved in this because this is something that I deeply care about. Now, having said that, we have in place right now at Thurgood Marshall Young People High School, NAACP. When I was at Wilberforce, we had an NAACP unit on the campus. I don't know if it's still active, but that's another way that young people can get involved. They got one that's Wright State University where young people can be involved. And of course, we have our youth programs at our local NAACP where young people can be involved.
Yeah, and of course they can go to the website at naacpdayton.org.
Yes.
It's a great website. It's just been redesigned. They can also check out the Facebook page, Dayton Unit NAACP, and follow us on Twitter. I think people would be surprised at how much is really happening.
Yeah. I'm surprised.
Well, and all the different members of the executive board are out there doing things behind the scenes. And so my role is, hey, let me know what you're doing. Let me know the events you're attending. Whatever. I mean, we just had somebody up in Huber Heights, getting people registered to vote. We've got a special election coming up here in Dayton. I think it's Tuesday, May 8th. It's a big deal here. And, with all the issues with voter registration and all that's happening, it's really important that people know what we're doing at the Dayton Unit NAACP and why they would get involved. I mean, why do you think somebody should get involved with the NAACP versus any other organization that might be out there that claims to be, fighting for civil rights? What do you think? What do you like about the Dayton unit?
What I like about it is because we're out there and we're doing what we need to be doing as in NAACP. And one thing I was going to say too, Reverend Fox said too, in the schools, like at Sliver School for the Arts, we have I think one of the groups meet there. They have brochures there. By me coaching, I see this.
Are you talking about AXO?
Axel, right?
Yeah.
And then I think in order just to go back to the one question in reference to getting young folks, I think if we can get more, go to some of these different schools and have some, and meet with the young people and let them know, not just the schools on the west side, but schools, throughout the community, let them know what we're all about. And then that way, we can, we could really maybe be able to draft them where they want to come to a meeting and see what's what and join, because we need more young blood.
Yeah.
Because without that young blood, I know our one person always talking about membership. Well, membership is great.
Yeah.
But
membership's
we need,
cheap. It's $30 a year.
Right. But we need more young blood.
Well,
too.
Yeah, far younger than me as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
here's the thing: the young people that I come into contact with, I tell them that they can learn so much. I've been on a steep learning curve. I've been involved in the 70s like you guys, but
Right.
just the last few years, and I've learned so much, and I continue learning from you guys.
Yes.
And I appreciate you helping me along, and having a conversation like this, I think, is really going to bring a measure of healing to our community, as we can just really talk openly about things. Because some people, they're just blissfully unaware out in the suburbs, and really are just unaware. I talked a little bit in my message about the closing of Good Sam and mentioned the closing of Aldi's. And the thing that's been so amazing to me, or so surprising, is the impact that the closing of a grocery store had. As it's almost the same impact as the closing of the hospital on an emotional level, or maybe it's a spiritual level. People are just stunned, especially on the west side and northwest. They're just like, well, how much more can we take?
Yeah.
And you think, well, a little grocery store, everybody knows that, Dayton is a food desert. 40% of Montgomery County is at risk of hunger, meaning folks don't know where their next meal, they're not certain where their next meal is going to come from. So the closing of one grocery store and the impact that that's had, it's like a shock, it's like a shock wave going on off in the community, the same as 1,400 employee hospital, right?
Yeah.
And then with the threat of schools, Dayton Public Schools closing, I think right now it's just one and possibly one more, closing and right-sizing and shuffling kids around. But I think this is a really important conversation to have, and I'm really honored to have been able to speak with you guys today, and honored to have you as my guest, Reverend Herman Branham and David Fox. Thank you so much for your time today, and for what you bring, and for all that you've done, not just recently, but over the decades, to really improve the lives of people in Dayton, and to be out there fighting. I just really appreciate you guys so much.
Well, we appreciate you hosting it and allowing us to be here, and I'm hoping that there are more young people that would look and listen, because we know that we've not had it easy, but we continue to do what we do, so that they won't have to go through the fight that we've gone through. So I'm hoping that they are paying attention, because a lot of these kids, they're born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They don't know what tough, rough times are about.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks.